Today we're going to learn how to upload profile images to users inside a website. And this is going to be based off directly of the previous episode I did, where I showed you guys how to upload images and files directly to a website. So if you guys haven't seen the previous episode, I recommend you guys go back, watch it first, and then return to this episode here. Because all the code you guys see in front of me here is directly the same as what we did in the previous episode, and we will continue to build on this system here we created previously. Now, another thing I should mention is that we also need to be able to create a login system, because it makes sense that in order to make a profile image upload system, we need to have a login system. So if you guys don't know how to make a login system, I also recommend you guys go back to episode 39, where I show you guys how to create a login system. So having said this, let's actually go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be building this episode here. So what you guys see in front of you here is going to be the prototype we're going to be building today. And yes, I know it doesn't look very pretty. I didn't focus on styling today, so if you guys want to make it pretty, you just need to add some CSS to it. Now, what we're going to be doing here, and I'm just going to take this one by one so you guys understand what is going on inside my browser here, is first of all, at the top of the page, we're going to go ahead and list out all the users we have inside the database. Now, right now, as you guys can see, I have no users because I didn't sign up any users down here. So what we're going to do underneath here, once we get all the users, is we're going to get a message that says if we're logged in or not, because I do actually have a login and a logout button down here. Now, I didn't create a traditional login system where you have a username input field and a password field and then click login, because we're just creating this as a test today. But it's going to work exactly the same way for uploading profile images had it been a regular login system. Okay, I just decided to create a button instead of a input field. We also have a logout button, so we can log out our admin again. That's basically what we have for a login system. And then up here, I have a sign up form where we can sign up a new user inside our website. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate what it is we're going to be doing and how the upload system is going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and sign up myself, Daniel Nilsson. I'm going to call myself admin because we need to be able to log in as admin down there. I'm just going to create a 123 password. And then after I click sign up, you guys can see we get admin. Now, what you guys will notice is that right now, as a default, once I click sign up, I haven't uploaded any kind of profile image yet. So as you guys can see, I get this default profile image. And this is actually something I uploaded inside my uploads folder inside my root folder. So as you guys can see, I get this profile default.jpg image. Now, once I do actually click login, you guys can see we now get a profile image upload system that replaces my sign up form, because I'm logged in. We shouldn't be able to sign up anymore. And instead, we can upload a profile image. Now, this profile image is going to go in and replace the default image we have up here. So if we go in and say choose file and select myself, click upload, you guys can see I now changed my profile image. So this is a pretty cool way to change it. Now, if I wanted to change it to another profile image, I would just go ahead and choose another file, another image, like this guy down here, upload him, and as you guys can see, we now get a new profile image. So this is basically what we're going to do today. So I hope you guys find this useful, because in a second, I'm just going to delete everything I have on the screen here, and then we're going to build everything from scratch. Okay, so now I went ahead and deleted everything inside the prototype, except for what we did in the previous episode. So as you guys can see, this is all identical to what we did previously in the last episode. Okay, so the first thing we need to do to create this upload system is that we need to create the database we're going to use in order to upload these images. So I'm going to go into my database, or at least inside PHP my admin, and as you guys can see, I already created a database called image upload. So if you guys don't have a database yet, or if you already have one running for another website, just go ahead and use that database. Go ahead and create one first. So inside my image upload database, we're going to go ahead and create two tables. I'm going to go into the SQL tab up in the top here, so we can write SQL code. And I'm going to go ahead and create two tables. The first one is going to be the user table. So I'm going to say create user, or create table, not user, of course. And then we're going to call this one user. We're going to go ahead and insert some values, or some values for the columns we're going to insert into the user table. So we're going to say parentheses and then semicolon. And inside of here, we're going to say that the first column is going to be named ID. The ID is going to be a data type set as integer. We're going to set it to maximum of 11 characters. We're going to set to not null. And then we're going to go ahead and set this one as our primary key. We also need to set it to auto increment, so it automatically updates to a new number higher every time we add a new user. Like so. And then comma. And then on the next line, we're going to go ahead and say we have a first name. So we're going to say first. We're going to create a varchar data type. We're going to set it to 256, not null. And again, this is all stuff you guys should know how to do by now. So we're just gonna move a little bit faster here. So last name, varchar, 256, not null. And then we're gonna create a username. I'm just gonna go ahead and copy what we have up here because it's gonna be completely identical. And then the last one is going to be the password. I'm gonna say password, it's gonna be varchar as well. 256 and not null, and no comma at the end here. So after we created the table for the user, we can actually go ahead and run the code. After we ran the code, we need to create a second table, because once we create this image upload system, we need to be able to tell if we already uploaded an image or if we didn't. Because if you haven't uploaded a profile image, we need to get the default image that I showed you guys inside my uploads folder. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and create a new table. And this table is going to tell us the status if we already uploaded a profile image or not. So we're going to say create table profile image. Again, we're going to insert some column values. The first one is going to be an ID, completely the same as we did for the user. So we're going to say integer 11, not null, primary key, and auto increment it, like so. Now the second column is going to be the ID of the user inside the user table when we do actually need to link the profile image we have in here to the user. So we need to know which user has which status of this profile image. So we say user ID, which is going to be the next name for the next column. We're going to say integer, because the ID of the users inside the user table is an integer as well. So why not just make it integer? 11 characters and not null. Then we need one more piece of data, because now we told it which user has this image status. So now we need to actually set the status as if we uploaded or did not upload the image yet. So we're going to say status, like so, integer, 11 characters, and not null. So that's all we need for the profile image table we have in here. We just need to know which user the image is linked to, and did he already or did he not upload a profile image. So we're going to go ahead and say go. So now we created the database we're going to use for this entire episode. So that's all we need to create in here. So going inside our code, the first thing we're going to do inside the index.php file is we're going to go ahead and set a session at the very top of our page. Because in order to be logged in, we need to have a session running inside the entire page. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a session up at the very top here. So we need to open up our PHP tags, like so. And inside the PHP tags, we create a session underscore start. So now we have a session started on the entire front page, which we need to have. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start a connection to our database, or at least create a connection so we have it for the database. So I'm going to open up a new file, and I'm going to go ahead and save this one as dbh.php inside my root folder. Now the code we're going to run in here is going to be the opening PHP tags. First of all, we need that. And we're going to create a variable called con, which is equal to the parameters we need in order to tell it which database we're connecting to. So we need to say mysqli underscore connect, parentheses. And inside of here, we need 4 different parameters. First of all, we need to tell which server we're actually choosing for the database, which in this case is localhost, because it's not online, comma. The next one is going to be the username, which in my case is root for my examp. And then the password is going to be empty because I'm using XAMPP. Again, if you're using another program for your local host, then you need to go ahead and check in which username and password you have for it. The fourth parameter is going to be the database name. And in my case, I decided to call mine image upload. If you have another name for your database, you need to change this to whatever you have for yourself. So we're just going to go ahead and create this because we're not going to do a bunch of error messages. We're just going to go ahead and create the very basics in order to get this image upload system running, because this part here is all stuff you guys could have learned when we created our login system. So we're not going to go too much into detail here. So once I have this, we can actually go ahead and go back to the index page, and we can link this DBH document to our front page. So at the very top here, right underneath the session start, we're going to go ahead and say include underscore once, single quotes, dbh dot php. So now we included this document in here. So now we do actually get a connection to the database. So the next thing we need to create is our login and logout forms. Of course, we could do this in any kind of order we wanted to, but I'm just going to go ahead and create the login and logout form first, because why not? So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and go underneath the form we created in the previous episode where we did actually upload images, and we're going to go ahead and create a form down here. Now this form is going to be our login form. So I'm just going to go ahead and set a action, which is equal to login.php. I'm going to set a method as post. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it a button. Now we're not going to give it an input because remember, I'm not trying to create an input field for the username and password. I just want a button that I can click and get logged in as the first user I created inside the database, which in this case is the admin. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a button. I'm going to set the button type as submit. I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, which is equal to submit login, like so. Now inside the button, we can go ahead and say login, just so we know what it does. And I'm going to go ahead and create a paragraph right on top of the form so we can tell ourselves what this form does. So I'm just going to go ahead and create paragraph tags. And I'm going to go ahead and say login as user, so we know what it does. Now we're going to go ahead and create a second form. We're just going to copy everything we have up here because it's going to be pretty identical to it. And this one is going to say log out as user, like so. Now we're going to go ahead and change the action to logout.php. And we're going to go ahead and change the title inside the button to logout, like so. We're also going to change the name of the button so it doesn't say submit login, but it should say submit logout. And that's basically what we need to do for the forms we have in here. So now we need to create documents that allow for us to log in and allow for us to log out. So we're going to open up a new document. I'm going to go ahead and save it as login.php inside my root folder. And inside this file, we're going to go ahead and open up the PHP tags. Now we're going to go ahead and create a session that has started, because we need to have that in order to log in a person when he clicks the button. We need to have a session running. Underneath here, we're going to go ahead and create an if statement. And inside the condition, we're going to go ahead and check if the button has been clicked. So we're going to say is set, parentheses, and then we're going to check for a post method called submit login. So I'm going to say $_post, brackets, single quotes. Then we're going to say submit login with a big L. At least in my case, I wrote it as a big L. Now inside the if statement, we're going to go ahead and log in the person as the person inside the database that has a session ID, or at least an ID, as 1. So we're going to say we have a session variable, which is a super global, by the way. You guys know this by now if you know how to create a login system. And we're going to go ahead and call this one ID. I'm going to set it equal to 1 because we just want the first ID from the database. And again, we're not actually getting anything from the database. I'm just saying I want to be logged in as the first user inside the database that has the ID as 1. So we're not doing any kind of special thing in here. So underneath here, the last thing we need to add is a header function. So we can actually be taken back to the front page once we did actually log in. So I'm going to say double quotes, location with a big L. And then we're going to go ahead and set it to index.php. And that's all we need to have inside the login.php file. Now the next thing we need to add is we're going to go ahead and add a logout file. So we're going to save a new file as logout.php. And then we need to do kind of the same thing in here. We need to first of all start out the PHP tags. And then we need to set a session start. Because in order to destroy a session, we need to have it started first. Then we're going to set a session underscore unset, which unsets all the variables we have inside our session variables. And then we're going to destroy it afterwards with a session underscore destroy. Like so. So now we just logged our person out if he does actually click the logout button. Now we also need to be taken back to the front page, so we're going to create a header function here as well. Called the exact same thing, logout, or location, not logout, colon, index.php. So now we just created a login and logout button that actually works. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tell the website what we want to see if we're logged in and what we want to see when we're logged out. So we're going to go back into the index.php file. At the very top of the body, we're going to go ahead and open up PHP code with the PHP tags. And then inside the PHP tags, we're going to create an if statement. And this if statement is going to check if we're logged in. So what we're going to do is we're going to check for a session ID that's set as ID. So we're going to say $_ actually no, we're going to say is set, parentheses, and then $_ session, which again is the super global, that has a name as ID. So now we're just checking if we are logged in, then do whatever's inside the if statement. So what we want to do inside the if statement is we want to create another if statement because we want to check if we're logged in as admin or at least the first person inside the database. So we're going to say is set, parentheses, and then we're going to say if the session ID we have up here is equal to 1, then write something inside this if statement. So we're going to say echo, you are logged in as user number 1 or something. We could also call it admin if you wanted to, but right now we're basically logging ourselves in as user number 1 from the database. So we're just going to say user number 1. Now what we also want to do is we want to go ahead and show if we are logged in, the form we created in the previous episode that allows for us to upload images, because we don't want to see the form where we can upload profile images if we're not logged in. We should only be able to upload images if we're logged in. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this form down here, delete it. Then I'm going to go ahead and go inside the first if statement after the second one. And then I'm going to go ahead and echo a string, which is going to be this form we just copied down there. Now, of course, we do need to change these double quotes to single quotes because we have single quotes around it. I'm just going to go ahead and do that really quick, like so, like so, like so. And change them. So now we basically have our image upload form inside the if statement that checks if we're logged in. Because now, if I'm not logged in, we can't actually see the form. So what we can do now is we can actually go ahead and test this really quickly just to see what's going on. So if I go inside the website, you guys can see, oh, we do actually get an error message. Let's actually go ahead and fix that. We don't set an is set for if we're checking if the session ID is equal to 1. We just need to check if the session ID is equal to 1. So if you caught that mistake, great job. So now, if you go back to the website, refresh, you guys can see we now get this. Right now it says you are logged in as user 1. So if I go ahead and say log out, we don't get a message. If I click login, we get a message. So this is basically working like we want it to. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and show a message if we're logged out. Because right now, as you guys can see, we don't see anything. If I go inside my code, right after the if statement where it says if we're logged in, then do this down here, we can go ahead and create an else statement. Now inside this else statement, we're going to echo you are not logged in. Just so we can see we're not logged in. As you guys can see, if I were to go back, it now says you are not logged in. Then if we log in, it doesn't say it anymore. So what we need to add underneath here is we're going to go ahead and add a sign up form. because when we're not logged in, we want to be able to sign up a new user. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go down to the next line, and we're going to start creating the HTML form that allows for us to sign up a new person. So we're going to say echo a string, and then inside the string, we're going to create the form tags. Like so. Then inside the form tags, we're going to go ahead and create the inputs we need in order to sign up a person. So we need to say input, which is going to have a type, which is equal to text. We need to set a name, which is equal to first, because now we're going to go into the database and make sure that all the inputs fill out what we have inside the user table. So if I go into the structure of my user, you guys can see we have a first name, we have a last name, a username, and a password. So we need to fill out all those 4 fields. Of course, the first one, which is the ID, is not going to get filled out because it does it automatically. So we're going to go back inside our code, and inside the input, we're going to go ahead and put a placeholder. So we can actually see what is written inside this input, inside the browser. So we're going to say first name, then we're going to close the input, and then we're just going to go ahead and copy it down 3 more times. Like so. Then we're going to go ahead and change the second one to last inside the name. We're going to change the placeholder to last name. Then the third one, we're going to go ahead and change the name to username, or at least UID, which in my mind stands for username. Inside the placeholder, we're going to say username. In the fourth one, we're going to change the type to password. We're going to change the name to PWD, and we're going to change the placeholder to password. Like so. Then we're going to create a button. Like so. And inside the button tag, we're going to go ahead and set a type, which is equal to submit. We're going to go ahead and set a name, which is equal to submit sign up. And this is basically all we need to do for the inputs. Now inside the form tag at the very top here, we also need to set an action and a method. So we're going to say action, which is equal to login.php. Then the method is going to be equal to a post method. So now we just created everything we needed for the login form, or the sign up form, not the login form. So if we go back to the website, you guys can see that once we log out, we get a sign up form. Of course, we forgot to put something inside the button. Let's do that really quickly. So inside our button down here, inside the sign up form, we're going to say sign up. So now it should look correctly. There we go. So now that we have that, we need to create the code in order to sign up a person inside the database. In order to do that, we need to see what is going on inside the browser. So before we start signing up people, we should probably create the thing that tells us how the user looks like inside our browser. So as you guys remember at the top of my prototype, we could actually see if we had a user inside the database or not. And if we had a user, it showed us what the username was, what the name of the person was, and what the profile image looks like. So we need to create that first, and then we can start signing people up. So at the very top of our page here, inside the body tag, actually no, inside the PHP tag up here, we're going to go ahead and start selecting users from the database, because we need to see if there is any kind of users from the database. And if there is, we want to show them inside the top of our website. If there isn't any users, then we want to show a message that says there are no users. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a select statement. So we need to write SQL code. So we're going to say we have a variable called SQL, which is equal to double quotes, select all from user. And that's basically what we need. Then on the next line, we're going to go ahead and run this query. So we're going to say $result, which is equal to mysqli underscore query, parentheses, semicolon. And then inside the parentheses, we're going to say we have a database connection inside our dbh.php file, which is called $con, which is going to be the first parameter because we need to connect to the database. And then for the second parameter, we need to run the SQL code up here. So we get all the results from this SQL string we just queried. On the next line, we're going to start spitting out the results. So first of all, we're going to go ahead and check if we actually got any results from the database, because if we don't have any users inside the database yet, we're going to get an error message if we start spitting out stuff. So first of all, we're going to say if we had any kind of database results by writing mysqli underscore num underscore rows parentheses from the query we ran called $result that is greater than 0. So if we had any more results than 0 running this query up here, then we want to run the code we have in here. And in here, we want to say, okay, if we had any results, then while we have results, we want to spit them out. So I'm going to create a while loop. There we go. So inside the while loop, we're going to say $row, which is equal to mysqli underscore fetch underscore assoc parentheses from the query we ran inside the select statement, like so. So if we got any results, then spit out each row result inside our while loop based on this query up here. So now that we did this, normally we would start spitting out the stuff we want to see from the user inside the database. So if I want to show a div box with the user image and the user, the username and the first name and last name, I could go ahead and start writing it inside this while loop. But we can't do that yet, because first of all, we need to check if we have uploaded any kind of profile images to this user yet, because based on that, we're going to have to run another select statement that goes in and checks if we already uploaded a profile image. So in order to explain this to you guys properly before we start writing anything new, let's go ahead and go back inside the database just to show you guys what's going on here. Now inside my user table, the first user I'm going to sign up is going to have an ID which is equal to 1. Now, because that user is going to have an ID, we also need to say that once we sign this person up, he needs to have a row inside our profile image table, which at the moment looks like this. So inside the profile image table, we need to tell it what the user ID is of the user and what the status is. Did he already upload or did he not upload a profile image? So based on the status, we need to say, do we want to show the default image inside the folder, or do we want to show the new image that he uploaded himself? So in order to check this, I need to check the user ID in here. We need to create another select statement, or at least we need to first of all get the user ID of the person who's inside the user table. So we're going to go ahead and say $ID, which is equal to $row, single quotes, ID, which now gets the ID of the user we just selected from the database. Now, because we have this, we now can go in and check the database inside the other table we have if the status of this user says that he already uploaded a profile image. So we're going to go ahead and create another select statement. So we're going to say $SQL, which is equal to a select statement. Let's actually go ahead and change this text so we have SQL image, which is equal to a select statement where we select all from profile image inside our table, where the user ID column that we have inside the user inside the profile image table is equal to the ID we have up here that we just got from the user. So now we're checking if we actually have a profile image uploaded from this user. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and run this query inside the database. So we can just go ahead and copy what we have up here, where we actually run the previous query, and then we just change the name of it down here. So we don't have SQL, but we have SQL image, and then we can change the result name over here. So we say we have result image, and then we go ahead and go in and check what the status is of this user inside the image table we created. So just to recap for you guys, the basic thing that's going on here is that we're going into the database, checking if we have users inside the database. If we have users, then you should start looping them out one after another. But each time it loops out one user, you should also go in and check if that user has an image that he uploaded inside the root folder of our website. Now the image, or at least the status, is going to show inside a profile image table, and based on that, we want to show the image or we don't want to show the image that he uploaded or not. So after we did this, we're going to go ahead and run another while loop. And inside of here is where we're going to start looping out the data we want to show inside the browser, because now we have data from both database tables and we can start spitting out whatever we have from them. So inside the parameter of this while loop, we're going to go ahead and say if $row image equals my SQLi underscore fetch underscore assoc parentheses. Then we're going to get $result image from up here. We're going to insert it inside the parentheses. So running this query up here. And now we can start spitting out the information we want to show inside the website. So now that we created the while loop, we can actually start spitting out the stuff we want to see inside the browser. For example, a div box with the image inside of it and the username and the first and last name of the user. We can start spitting that out. So what we're going to do here is I'm first of all going to echo out a string, which is going to be a div box. I'm also going to go ahead and close the div box in a second echo underneath here, because we need to put some stuff in between, like so. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and check if the status of the image says it's uploaded or not uploaded already. So we're going to create an if statement where we go into the second query we ran, which is called $row image brackets, and we're going to check if the status inside this column says that the image has been uploaded or if it has not been uploaded yet. So we're going to say if it's equal to 0, then we already uploaded an image. But if it's not 0, then we want to create an else statement down here that says we haven't uploaded an image yet. So we need to echo out the default image I inserted inside my root folder, inside the uploads folder. So we're going to go ahead and dig in a path. We're going to create an image that has a source equal to single quotes uploads / profile default .jpeg. Then after the single quote, we're going to go ahead and close off the image tag. So now we're basically showing the default image I have inside my root folder if we don't have any kind of changes made to the profile image yet. Now inside the other if statement up here, we're going to go ahead and copy this echo. We're going to insert it, and instead of writing profile default, we want to write profile and then delete the default. We're going to start up PHP code again by writing double quotes and then 2 punctuations. And then we want to show the user ID from the user inside of here. Because now the name of the image is going to be profile1, because the guy I'm logged in as right now has an ID as 1 inside the database. So right now the image is going to be called profile1. So what we need to make sure we do now is that once we do actually upload a new profile image, we need to change the name to something else than the unique ID we created in the previous episode. As you guys can see down here, we created the new file name, we made a unique ID, which we now need to change to whatever we have inside here instead. Okay, and we need to do that in just a few minutes. So one last thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and say, well, if we had no users inside the database yet, then we need to have an else statement that says there are no users inside the database. So there are no users signed up yet. So we're going to echo out an else statement that says there are no users yet. Now we need to finish off what we have inside the div box, because right now we're just showing the image, but I also want to show the username and the first name and last name of the user, or at least just the username. Doesn't really matter. So right underneath the else statement, we're going to go ahead and say we have an echo that echoes out the username of the person inside the database. So right now we want to go up and grab the query from the last result we got up here, which is $row, and say we have a column called username. So now we're echoing out the username and the image of the person inside the database. So now that we created this, we're basically done inside the index page, except for one more thing we need to do at the end. But now what we need to do is we need to make sure that when we sign up a new person using the sign up form we have down here, that we insert data inside the user table and inside the profile image table inside the database. Once we've done that, we're basically done creating this image upload system. Well, we also need to change the upload.php file we have inside from the previous episode, but that's really easy code to do. So we're almost done. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and create a new file. We're going to save it as signup.php. And inside of here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the PHP tags. And then after we click the sign up button inside our index page, we need to grab the data that we passed on from the index page. Right now, as you guys can see, if I go down to the sign up form, we have a first name, a last name, a username, and a password. So inside the signup.php file, we're going to say we have a variable called first, which is equal to a super global called post that has a name as first. Then we're just going to go ahead and copy this, paste it down 3 more times. And then we're just going to go ahead and change the names inside these variables and inside the super global. So the second one was called last. In the third one, we called it UID. And the fourth one, I called it PWD for password. So now that we have this, we can start inserting the data inside the user table. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called SQL, which is equal to double quotes insert into the user table, parentheses, space, values, space, parentheses, semicolon at the end. And then we need to insert the column names and the values we have from up here. So in the first parentheses, we're going to say we have first, comma, last, comma, username, comma, password. Then I'm just going to go ahead and move this down to the next line, just so we can see this better. And inside the parentheses here, I'm going to say single quotes. Then the variable first we have up here, like so, comma, single quotes, variable last, comma, single quotes, variable UID, comma, single quotes, and then $PWD. So now we're just inserting data inside the user table, or at least we have the string that we need to query in order to insert it into the user table. So underneath here, we're going to say $result. We're going to set it equal to mysqli underscore query, parentheses. Then we need to get the database connection, which we haven't gotten yet. So we need to go at the top of the page here, include underscore once, single quotes, dbh.php, semicolon, because now we can go in and get the database connection, which is $con, comma, and then we want to run a query, which is up here called $SQL. And once we've done this, we signed up the user. Now, one small detail I just noticed is that we don't actually need to have the $result equal to down here. So we're just going to go and remove that. And then right underneath where we have the insert statement, we now need to go into the database, select the user we just inserted into the database, so we can use this information to create a new row inside the profile image table inside our database. So on the next line here, we're just going to go and copy everything we have right here. And instead of an insert statement, we're going to create a select statement. So we're going to say select all from user where UID, or not the UID, the username is equal to UID from up here. And first is equal to the first name we have up here. Now you might be asking, why am I doing 2 different parameters down here? That's simply because we want to eliminate as many errors as possible. If a user for some reason has signed up his username as the exact same thing as another user, then we would end up going in and overriding that first user. So we want to make sure that the username and the first name is the same, just to make sure there's less errors. So after we have this, we can now go down to the query down here, and we can go ahead and say that we have a variable called results that is equal to the query that we just ran in here. After the query, we then run an if statement. And inside the condition of this if statement, we want to check if we had any results from this select statement here. So we're going to say if mysqli underscore num underscore rows, parentheses, from the $result here, greater than 0. So if we have more than one result, then it needs to run this code down here. Else, we want to give an error message that says echo, you have an error or something. Inside the if statement, we now need to get the data from this user we just inserted into the database. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have a while loop, parentheses, curly brackets, and inside the while loop condition, we're going to say $row is equal to my SQLI underscore fetch underscore assoc, parentheses, and then we're going to say $result inside the parentheses. So now we're basically getting all the data from the user we just inserted into the database. Inside the while loop, we want to get one piece of information from this user. We need to get his ID inside his column. So we're going to go ahead and say we have $user ID, which is equal to $row brackets. And inside the brackets, we want to say we want to get the ID of this user here. So now that we have the ID, we can actually go ahead and insert a new row inside our profile image column. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and say we have a new insert statement. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy what we have up here, paste it underneath here, move everything out so it looks nice, like so. And then we're going to change it from insert into user to insert into profile image. Then we're going to change it inside the parameters because we only have 2. So I'm going to change it from first to user ID, and then from last to status. Then inside the values, we're also going to delete the last 2 because we only have 2 different parameters. We want to change it from $first to user ID because we want to insert the user ID of the user inside the user ID inside the profile image column. And then inside the second parameter, we're just going to go and delete what we have here and write 1. Now the reason we're writing 1 is because right now inside the index page, once we loop out the user inside our website, we're checking if he has a status inside his profile image set to 0 or 1. If it's 0, then we're looping out the profile image he uploaded. If it's 1, then we're basically saying that he doesn't have a profile image yet. So right now, because he's just signed up, he doesn't have a profile image yet. So now we're going to go ahead and save this. And the last thing we need to do is we need to take us back to the front page. So we're going to say header, at least the header function, location, index.php. So now we basically have everything we need in order to test this out because it should be working now. So if we go back inside our website, we can actually go ahead and refresh everything. Right now it says there are no users yet, you're not logged in. Because we're not logged in, we didn't create any users yet. If I were to go in and try and sign myself up with Daniel Nilsson, admin, why not? 1, 2, 3, sign up. You guys can see we now get a profile image, my username, which now shows we have a user inside the database. Of course, it doesn't look exactly the same as what I showed you guys in my prototype because we haven't actually styled anything yet. But as you guys can see, we now have the profile image and the admin. So now that we have the profile image here, what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to go ahead and style this very quickly. I'm going to show you guys the code so you guys can copy it, but I'm just going to go ahead and paste in some code I created from my prototype. So the first thing I'm going to do to make it look nice is I'm going to go into my index page. I'm going to go into my div that I have inside my while loop in here. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a class. I'm going to give it a class name as user-container. Then I'm going to go ahead and say that the username down here is going to be inside 2 paragraphs or inside 1 paragraph, like so. And like so. And then I'm going to go into my style sheet, which I haven't created yet. I'm just going to create one really quick. I'm going to save it as style.css, like so. And then I'm just going to go ahead and paste in all the code I have for my styling. Again, if you guys want to see this, I'm going to go ahead and leave a link in the description for you guys where you can download this style sheet link. So you can just paste it in if you want to. So now I'm just going to go into my index.php file. I'm going to go ahead and link to the style sheet up here at the very top. Style.css. And now I'm going to go into the website, refresh it, and as you guys can see, we now have a bit of styling, so it doesn't look completely ugly. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and log in my user by clicking login as user. Once I'm logged in, it says you're logged in as user number 1. And now I can actually start uploading profile images to my profile here. but we need to make a small change to the document we created in the previous episode, which is the one called upload.php, because we don't want the name to be some kind of unique number. And we need to make sure that once we upload a new image, we also make a small change to the database. So at the top of this document here, we're going to go ahead and start a session. Like so. And once we start a session, I'm going to go ahead and go underneath here, connect to my database file. We're going to include _once dbh.php. After including the database file, we now need to get the session ID of the user who's just logged in. Because in order to change the profile image, we now need to tell the database who we are as a user. So which kind of username or user ID do we currently have. So underneath the include, I'm going to say we have a variable called ID, which is equal to the current session ID. Like so. So now we have everything we need in order to change the name of the file we're going to upload. So I'm going to go back down to where we just created the new file name called $filename_new, and I'm going to go ahead and delete the unique ID we have down here. First of all, we're going to go ahead and include a new string. So I'm going to say double quotes. I'm going to say profile. Then after the double quote, we're going to say punctuation, and then we want to reference to the current session ID. So we're going to say $ID. So now the name of the file is going to be profile, then the name of my current session ID, punctuation, and then the file extension. So now that we have this, all we need to do now is go into the profile image database table and update the information we have in there, because right now the status is set to 1, which means that we haven't uploaded a profile image yet, but we want to change it to 0 to tell it that we just uploaded an image and we now have a current profile image inside our root folder. So right before we go into the header location or the header function down here, because we need to do this before we go back to the front page, we're going to go ahead and write an SQL statement. So we're going to say $SQL, double quotes, and then we're going to say update profile image. And we're going to go ahead and set the status column equal to 0, where the user ID is equal to a current session ID. So $ID. And now the last thing we need to do is we just need to run the query. And after that, we just need to do one more thing, which is very short, and then we're done. So I'm going to go ahead and say $result is equal to mysqli underscore query parentheses semicolon. And inside here, we're going to get the database connection called con. And then we want to get $SQL. So now that we did this, we can actually go ahead and test this, because now it should be working. So if we're going to the website, refresh, I choose some kind of profile image, and I select maybe myself in here, upload. Whoops, we get a error message. Upload the PHP line 27. Let's actually go ahead and check that out. I forgot to add a semicolon at the end here. There we go. Now we can go in and check that it's working. So let's actually go ahead and refresh again. Choose a file and upload. And as you guys can see, my image just changed. Because now if we go into the database, go into the profile image, it now says my status is equal to 0, meaning that I now have uploaded a profile image, even though we set it as 1 when we created the user. If I were to go in and create a new user, just to show you guys, I'm going to call this one Jane, though, I'm going to call her something else. 1, 2, 3. Sign her up. Now you guys can see that she also have the default image. And if you go into the profile image database, just to show you guys, her image status right now says that she has a status as 1, meaning that she doesn't have a profile image. If I were to log in as Jane and change the image, it will get changed to 0, which is what we just did with my profile. So this is basically how we can do this. Now, one last thing I want to mention is that if I were to go in and change my profile image again, if I were to log in, choose another image, right now you guys can see it didn't change for some reason, even though I just uploaded a new image. And it's not an error caused by the image file name or anything like that, but it's actually because some browsers can remember how images look like. So if I were to refresh this enough times, you guys can see now it changed. So we want to make some kind of change so it doesn't happen. So it needs to update the profile image right away after we change the image. Now in order to do that, we're going to go back inside index.php. And inside index.php, we're going to go down to where we have the name of our image. So right now it says we have profile variable id.jpg. Right after the JPEG, we want to add a random number of some kind in order for it to always update the name of the image. Because if we just keep updating the image without changing the name, then the browser is going to think it's the same image as last time right before we change the image. So if we want to update it right away, we need to also update the name of the image when the browser loads the image. So after JPEG, we're going to say question mark. And then after the single quote, we're going to say double quotes because we want to change it to PHP code right now. Punctuation marks. And then we're going to go ahead and create a function called mt_random, which is going to give us a random number between a certain amount of numbers. So we're going to say parentheses. Now, because we're not setting any kind of parameters in here, it's just going to give us some kind of random number. So this is basically all we had to do for this episode. And I hope you guys found it useful, even though it was quite long. But this is basically how you change profile images, or at least one of the ways you can change profile images, because there's quite a few ways you can do this. So if you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.